As I build my coaching business, I want to know how to effectively serve clients and make more money doing it. This podcast will pull back the curtain to reveal exactly how successful coaches are building their empires. Join me as I engage with top coaches from all over the world to discover their secrets. No theatrics and no theory, just real life strategy. My name is William Winterton, and this is Coaching Success Radio.
Hey, welcome back to the program, and I am super excited today. I have a business consultant who has worked to scale Fortune 500 companies and their leaders. He has shifted now entirely over to working with small business owners. He gives them the strategies and all the systems they need to scale their business. And his wife and partner is a life strategist and operations whiz. She takes care of the day-to-day team task management of their businesses and their children. They're both sought-after public speakers. They're both published authors, amazing people. Their new book, The Lifestyle Builders, Build Your Business, Quit Your Job, and Live Your Ideal Lifestyle. It's available now on Amazon Kindle. It is an amazing book for budding entrepreneurs. It's something I wish I had 15 years ago. I want you to please welcome Tom and Ariana Sylvester. How are you guys doing?
Good. Thank you so much for having us on.
Absolutely doing great, man.
Super cool. And Tom, I don't know if you're aware or not, but you have the distinctive honor on this program of being my very first guest who has come back for a second time. So look at that.
I love it.
Man, I tell you what, this is awesome. So super cool. Hey, so tell me, first of all, a little bit about what got this journey going into creating this book.
Yeah, well, this guy's always wanted to write a book, actually multiple books, in fact, and it's kind of always been on the radar. And as we've built this business and, we kind of hit upon this Lifestyle Builders brand and we're like, this is the one, finally, we found it. We kind of have been like gathering our frameworks and taking all of the experiences and stories and lessons that we've learned over the years and using them in our podcast and as blog posts. And we kind of started thinking like, wow, this would make a really cool book someday. And of course, someday then meant like immediately for Tom because he was like, oh, book, I'm going to start writing it.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. So we were obviously having really good success with our coaching programs with all of our clients. And when new people would come and find us, they'd find the podcast and they were like, guys, we love this show. We love the dynamic of the two of you. But as we're listening to episodes, it's like you're talking about family here, finances here, business here. And do you just have like a roadmap or something we could follow? And what we realized was that, as much as people love the podcast, it wasn't step by step. So we said, well, what if we just took basically what we did in our coaching programs and put it logically into the book format and then tie in the back and forth that people loved on the podcast into the book. And so what we realized was we could help a lot more people and it would be a really good supplement to the podcast to say, hey, you can still listen in, but now here's the step-by-step that you got to take to do this for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It's fantastic. I really enjoy and appreciate the fact that you guys are working together and reading through the book. It's a unique perspective from both of you, two sides of this kind of coming at you and telling the story. So tell me exactly who you would describe as perfect. Again, this is something that I'm 41 years old. I'm looking back like, oh man, in my mid-20s, this would have been freaking awesome. Right when I was getting married, totally been great to go. Who are you really targeting this thing for? And what is your ideal client for that?
Yeah, if we look at the back of the book, I think the first sentence says it all. So most people have two lives, the one that they're living and the one that they want to live. So really the target for this is that person that is had the epiphany and is like, I want something different. And, ideally, the earlier in life we figure that out, the better. So if you figure that out like when you're in high school and you realize that you don't want to go on that traditional path of going to college, getting into a bunch of debt and then figuring out how to dig yourself out, that's ideal. But what we found is that it's a lot of people, just like you said, man, I wish we would have found you years ago. It's usually people that, have responsibilities, they have a family, and, they likely have a career, and they just realize that they really want more out of life. They want to be able to, not only pay off debt, but start to build wealth and then really give themselves options to say, hey, if I enjoy my job and I want to keep working it, great. But if I get to a point where I realize I don't want to do that anymore, I've been able to build up a business that gives us cash flow so that I can eventually leave my job, which is, what we were able to do and what a lot of our clients want to do as well.
Yeah, we like to joke that our ideal client is Tom like 10 years ago. Because a lot of the people we talked to, it was like they're in that situation now, or they were in that situation a couple years ago that we found ourselves in. And everything that we've developed up to this point has been things that we ourselves have needed and couldn't find anywhere in the space. So we created them.
So what is one thing out of this experience of going through and writing this as you start obviously dissecting podcasts, you're going through your coaching, you're going through probably there's a lot of conversations with people you've worked with. What are some things that you pulled out that really didn't exist before this book? All of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, I never even thought about this epiphany or this epiphany, that kind of reared their heads as you started writing it.
I think one of the biggest concepts that's come out from everybody that we've talked to before and now after it's come out has been, a lot of times when you're going through this journey, you have to read books from all over the place to get all these concepts that we have found necessary on our journey to this point. And that can be really frustrating because you don't know what books you need, or you don't know what things you need to read about. And then to try and pull it all together to be like, oh, I need this from over here and I need this from over here. All of these pieces put together the whole puzzle to then make me able to have the success that I want. And that was one of the things that as we were putting the book together, we were in the bookstore trying to figure out, like, where would this book fit if it were on the shelf? And I'm like, okay, well, it could fit over here because, we talk about business. But then you look at the personal finance section, it could fit over here a little bit too, because we do touch on personal finance and how it's really important before you start a business to get that in place. But then it could also fit into like the self-help personal development section, because we also talk a lot about like figuring out what you want in life and making that a key point to, before you start your business, figure out what it is you're trying to create. So I think that for me has been one of the key concepts that's come together, is these pieces, these essential pieces that you need from each of these different areas or categories, they're all together in one place. So you don't have to go read 50 different books from different sections in the bookstore.
Yeah, well, and the other piece of that too, like that's definitely come through, and people are like, like there's a section we put at the beginning of the book that said, look, like I've read thousands of books and we wrote this so that you don't have to, right? So you get that high level view of what this all looks like. The coolest thing for me that I've seen, and it started with our podcast and it's been even more clear with the book, is that when people come, into our world, they're either like, man, Tom, you and I are like twins. We think the same way, we have the same ambitions, or, they're like, Ariana, like I totally get you. My spouse is that crazy entrepreneur or that person that wants to go after financial independence, and I either wasn't on board or I'm not on board. And so what's been really cool is that most people are finding themselves in one of the two roles we have, and then really said, like, this is great, let me give it to my husband, or this is great, let me give it to my wife, so that they can kind of see the other side of it and how we can do this together.
It really is nice to put that in perspective, because you feel isolated as an entrepreneur. And I think maybe you and I talked about this when you were first on, Tom, is the idea that your brain is just going, and you have your spouse, your partner, who is there supportive, and it's very hard to put into language what it is they can actually do to help you, that's actually going to give you what you need. And yet, if they weren't there, how less you'd be able to achieve. If it's like you need their support. So putting that, what I love about this is it's a great way to verbalize that and put it in a perspective that I'm able to actually take and take a piece out for myself. And I'm having my wife read it right now too, actually. So got to get her perspective on it. I wish she had gotten it before the podcast. I'm like, I want you to see this so we can kind of go on. But so talk to me through a little bit of what you mean by lifestyle builder. For somebody who's watching this, interested in the topic and hearing us kind of dancing around it, go into the heart of what this book really is talking about.
Yeah, Lifestyle Builders is more, we wanted to create a movement with this. There's so much out there. People are feeling pressure from outside sources to have certain things, to do certain things, to follow a certain path. And one of the things that we've really kind of seen as we jumped into this and had to reframe for ourselves was that everybody is different, and everybody's in a different life situation, and everybody has different goals for what they want out of their life. And becoming a lifestyle builder is really all about identifying what that is, getting on the same page with it as your spouse, and then really following down the path of like, how are we going to do that? Not how did everybody else in the world do that? How are we going to do that? Because for everybody, it looks different. Obviously, for us, it was through entrepreneurship and building businesses. But a lot of the things we talk about with people, it doesn't have to just be that. We have a lot of customers and clients who want to keep their jobs and they really enjoy their jobs, but they want to also build a lifestyle that can be more fulfilling for their family. So it might mean building a side business that's bringing in enough income to keep them comfortable. It might mean retiring their spouse. It means something different to everybody. So that's really what lifestyle building is about. And that's why our tagline is your life, your business, your way, because we want you to take the framework and then fit it to you.
Yeah, I mean, here's the big thing. We all want more options. And the more options you have, the more flexibility you have in decisions you make. You know, one of the worst scenarios for people to be in is to, you know, rack up debt, to be living paycheck to paycheck and have to be so dependent on their job that even if they hate it, they can't do anything about it. So Lifestyle Builders is really all about saying, all right, how do we set ourselves up with as many options as possible so that, as Ariana said, if you enjoy your job, keep doing it and let your side business keep building income to build your wealth and give you flexibility. And if you decide at some point that you want to leave your job, let's do that and let's transition you out of it. Because one of the big challenges we've seen with a lot of people as they achieve success, they leave their job and they're like, man, I wasn't ready for full-time entrepreneurship. I didn't know how hard it would be to be working by myself, or how I would manage friends and family that are like, you know, I can't believe you're leaving your job. You're irresponsible. So it's really all about, you know, guiding people on that journey and giving yourself as many options so that you can truly live the life you want now, and you're not having to wait till 65 to retire to enjoy life.
In a whole attitude of retiring at 35, that the commitment that you made to yourself, I remember talking through. And also, it really ties in with your podcast. I love that this just really kind of connects. And so as a coach who works with other coaches who are looking at thinking about writing their own book, maybe they have their own blog, maybe they have a podcast, or they're interested in developing themselves out. I love the way that you've connected everything in your business, your podcast, your personal stories, this book. I see something building. And as Ariana mentioned here, kind of like there's a movement that you're trying to build out of this. Talk to me through where is this movement going? What would you love to see happen and kind of bloom out of this book?
Oh, so many things.
I know that's a loaded question, but I know it's in your, like, I know this is setting up, you're like building up, and there's all sorts of stuff. I just want to kind of see where things are in your heart right now.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things with the book is impacting more people. So obviously there's only two of us, so we can only speak to so many people. We can only be one-on-one with so many people. Having the book allows us to kind of open the door and have more people see into the movement. I definitely see speaking as something that we want to step more fully into, sharing our story and the stories of other lifestyle builders out there. And I'm sure Tom has lots of other things he wants to add to that.
Yeah, well, I mean, so at the end of the day, here's the thing. So we both fell into the trap of that traditional path. It was go to high school, get good grades, go to college, get good grades, get into debt, and then work a career, hopefully if we can find a job based on that, to pay off debt and to get us there so that we can hopefully retire by 65. That is the path that so many of us are on, and we don't realize there's other paths out there. So the overarching idea with this movement is to say, let's be intentional. Before we make decisions on if we're going to go to college, if we're going to start a business, if we're going to do the trades, let's, one, figure out what we want our lives to look like in the future. And then two, let's understand all the options available, and let's pick the one that's most likely going to fit for us. So there are people that should go to college, and we're not bashing college. There's also people that are much better off going to the trades, and that's going to give them the life they want. There's people that should be an entrepreneur and maybe start that way early on. But what we want people to do is realize that there are different paths, and to intentionally pick the one that is most likely going to get them the lifestyle that they want.
I love the permission that it gives. In other words, what I'm hearing in this sense is because, again, I grew up very much like that. I've never had a desk job in the sense of like I've gone in and sat at a cubicle. My wife loves that though. She is the person who she's very entrepreneurial minded. She loves to build stuff, but at the same time, she loves her schedule 9 to 5. I want to sit here. I want to do my Excel sheets. I like when things add up and numbers. And I'm the guy who likes to just throw paint cans on the wall. Like, oh, that's cool. Let's try this. So it's kind of, but it's permission to live both. And it's permission to be that, yeah, everybody's not wired to follow the exact same path. And I think that this would be, I kind of see, and in reading this, I'm thinking my wife needs to read this, but I've got a 14-year-old daughter. And I'm thinking like, man, this is the reading material. Of course, I want her to read it, but I'm like, I want her class to read this, right? Like, I want more than just my kid to go through this. I know we're raising our kids to be entrepreneurial minded. I'm watching you guys. I know you have how many? Two. It feels like more sometimes, I'm sure, but it's like, but the same way, you're raising them up, and you're growing them. I know yours are very young, but you're going to grow them. But I'm thinking, man, what a difference culturally this would make, and in the mind of a person that sales and small business really isn't something to be frowned upon, or the trades, as you said, to go into that instead of going and pursuing college and getting into debt.
Yeah, well, and a big thing too, like it's funny, as we've been raising our kids, we've got a 4-year-old and a 7-year-old. They're now starting to pick up on a lot of this. And, they're all about lifestyle builders. They have their own shirts, and our daughter's talking about starting businesses all the time. And so, I mean, as we expand this, what we're looking to is to say, all right, we wrote this typically for people that are already on the journey and realize they want to make a shift. But what we're seeing too is that there's a lot of opportunity to get into. Like, we already have colleges that are taking this book and using it for their entrepreneurial classes. It's like, great, but how do we get at people even younger? So what we're looking at in the future is like, well, how do we target this lifestyle builders concept to high school students? How do we target this even to kids to start getting them thinking that way early on? Because the earlier we can let people understand there's different options, the more that they're going to grow up realizing that and seeing that these are possible and starting to set their path a lot earlier. And the coolest thing I think with all of this too is it doesn't mean, like, a lot of people are like, well, you guys are retired at 35, but you're still working. Like, you're not really retired. And the point is, it's less about retiring and like sitting on the beach, but it's more about being able to choose what you're going to do and when you're going to do it and not having to. So for example, I was doing business consulting. I love consulting. I love business. I geek out on this stuff. But there were a couple of years ago where I was traveling 4 or 5 days a week to another city to do this work. And for a while, it was like we were trapped and that was the only thing I could do. But because we set ourselves up with options and follow this path, I was able to leave that, now do consulting virtually in a lot of cases, and be able to do what I love and still make money and not have to feel trapped by what I had before. And a lot of people truly enjoy the work they're doing and want to do more of it. They just don't like the circumstances that they're set up in.
It's beautiful. That's awesome. I love the movement. I love what you guys have done. I love the passion you guys have poured into this thing. I would just love to give you anything I haven't asked you about this before we wrap anything up here. Something I didn't ask you about the book, or something that you're really wanted to share with the audience.
So I'm gonna ask Ariana. So Ariana, as somebody listening to this, because obviously a lot of your listeners are coaches. So as somebody listening to this that their spouse maybe isn't completely on board yet with, starting a business or, joining the Lifestyle Builders movement, what would you say to them?
I would say it is a process. Unfortunately, not everyone has a spouse that's supportive. You're not alone in that. We find it a lot. It has been a process for me. Like, a lot of people see us now and they're like, oh, you're the dynamic duo. You guys are awesome. And they think that this has just been a cakewalk. And that's not true. This was a struggle for us to get on the same page, to have to up level to different things and new parts of the business. And now we're published authors and like holy imposter syndrome. So it is a process, not just for you as the entrepreneur, but for your spouse as well. And sometimes you have to just remember to stop and reach a hand back and say, how can I support you in getting comfortable with what I'm doing? Do you have any questions? Are there things that you are afraid of? Are there fears that you have around this? And just talk to each other and open up that conversation. Talk about what your lives are going to look like and what this opportunity for you is creating for your family and the future. So I think that's one of the things that people often don't think about because, like you guys said, you're that one person, you're in your lane and you're throwing the paint at the wall and you've got ideas and you're running with it. Don't forget to bring your spouse along with you. It's going to take them some time to process and get used to this new life that you're creating.
Their new book, Lifestyle Builders, Build Your Business, Quit Your Job, and Live Your Ideal Lifestyle. It's available on Amazon Kindle. Tom, Ariana, it has been an absolute pleasure having you back on. Thrilled. I love talking with you guys. Love hearing your story and just wish you the greatest success.
Thank you so much. It was so much fun to come on.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, man.
Wow, that was awesome. Thank you so much for tuning in and checking us out. New episodes are coming out every few days, including lots of conversations with massively successful coaches sharing their secrets with you. So be sure to subscribe to our podcast and YouTube channel so that you don't miss out. And if you're looking for a way to start making serious money from your coaching, you need to check out my free training. It's at williamwinterton.com. I lay out the step-by-step on how to start making 5 figures a month in the next 60 days. Check it out, williamwinterton.com. I'll see you next time.